Let's go. How do I fade that out? Can't. Just stop it. All right. So for tonight's video, I want to go over the 9 different designs that I've got. Taking this earpiece out. I hear myself talk. Oh, you know what? I'll leave it in. Go over here to voice meter. And mute. There it is. Okay, cool. So, I want to go over the 9 different designs that I have for colonizing the oceans. Okay? You're probably asking yourself, why do you have all these designs to like colonize the oceans? Like who cares about that? Who cares about colonizing the oceans? Like what's that have to do with anything? Well, in theory, you know, there's enough room for unlimited people to colonize space and the galaxy and forever and ever and always. So to get there, you know, it doesn't just happen automatically. You know, there has to be like a step-by-step path to get from where we are in 2024 to a spacefaring civilization. And I know it has a lot more to do. I mean, there's a lot more to it than space colonies. There's a lot more technology than just space colonies. But in my vision, you know, it takes a development of culture and a development of lifestyles, of civilization. You know, we think that we live in an advanced civilization because, hey, compare us to 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we're an advanced civilization. 10,000 years ago, we're much more advanced than them. But the truth is, if we're ever to become a spacefaring civilization and have gazillions and like trillions of quadrillions of people throughout the solar system and beyond, you know, they'll look back at us as being pretty primitive here in the year 2024. Who knows if they'll even use the same number system for years at that point, or if they'll even use years because maybe they won't care about how long it takes for Earth to go around the sun. But anyway, to become a spacefaring civilization, you know, you have to build colonies in space, right? But it's a tall order in today's world to just build colonies in space. So my suggestion is to build floating cities on the ocean. Okay? And I came up with this concept way back in like 2010. I think it was like the year 2009 or probably 2009, to be honest with you. And I came up with, eventually, not just in the year 2010, but in the next year to 4 years, from 2010 to 2014, I came up with a whole bunch of different cool designs to enable, you know, a vision for how humanity could spread out onto the ocean and develop the culture and civilization that it takes to spread out into space. Okay? Because in my belief, to successfully spread all of civilization into space and beyond, and to have a healthy, non-violent, you know, a civilization that's not at war with itself, you have to develop that civilization, that society, that culture. And spreading out onto the ocean is the best way to do it. Whether you're using materials from land here on Earth, or if you're dropping in materials from space and building, you know, whatever floating structures you can come up with. So anyway, here's some of the 9 designs that I came up with. And I'm saying 9, but I think there's actually probably more than that. We'll see. Anyway, so behind me, as you can see, there is this floating island. It's a giant floating island, okay? What you're seeing here is basically, it's a rectangular island, which is 10 kilometers long. So 10 kilometers long. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 4 to 6 kilometers wide. I don't remember offhand. It's been that long. I don't even remember my own measurements. But I do remember that it was 10 kilometers long. And so what this is it's basically based off of a O'Neill cylinder. So you may not be familiar with O'Neill cylinders, but one of the most prevailing concepts of space colonies is basically, if you take like a tube shape, picture the shape of like literally a toilet paper tube or a can, a soda can. And if you spin a cylinder, everything on the inside, standing on the inside of the cylinder would be like a huge interior environment where you're actually able to stand, like as if you have gravity. It's kind of like simulated gravity. I'm getting a little bit, abstract here. You don't have to use your imagination that much in this video. I promise, that was as far as I'll take it. But anyway, this floating island is basically taking an O'Neill cylinder concept and just unraveling that cylinder. Just take that cylinder shape and then open it, okay? So you can basically take all of the amenities and all of the structure without having an O'Neill cylinder in space. You can have the most similar environment right here on Earth, but where could you put it? You can't really put that, like on land. So it makes sense to build it on the ocean. So you open up that O'Neill cylinder so that you have basically a huge rectangle is what you would end up with. If you take a cylinder and slice it down the middle and open it up, you have a rectangle. So I'm taking that shape and placing it on the ocean, okay? And then I'm lifting it up from the ocean surface with a bunch of columns. You see there's a lot of columns here. And by the way, this model is huge, like in the computer. Like it's not even, you can't even see it moving right now because it might take a few moments for it to, the computer hardware to catch up with the model. This computer that I have is far stronger than 99% of computers out there. It's enormous. I have an extremely powerful computer. But even with this, it's a struggle because I have all these other floating islands. See all at the bottom? These are all other models I'm going to bring up during this video. Okay? So let's go underneath of this floating island. I wanted to show you some of the basic concepts. This should be just like a quick overview video of the 9 different designs. Sooner or later I'll post videos, more details of how each design works. But I just wanted to give you a basic view. Okay? So the columns are super tall. Okay, so I'm picturing each of these columns, it's like 50 or 100 meters off of the surface. It's very high. And there's a lot of column that's below the surface of the water too. So that acts as the support structure, as the flotation structure. Okay. And then underneath there's also like a hanging suspended rail system so that you can get from one end of the island to the other. Wow, can't believe it's actually not able to move this. If this was the only file I had open, it would move very quickly. So, another way for me to make this video, I could have made the clips and then strung it together and then talked over it. But anyway, this is the biggest design for a floating island that I've ever created. It's intended to hold 10 million people. Okay, so it has amenities for everything. It has power plant, well-equipped power plant that's multiple redundant and has more than enough power, more than enough trash, handling capacity, distribution to all of the, we'll call them condo units or apartments, for everything that you'd want: mail, food, deliveries, anything you order or have sent to you. We have distribution for that. I was trying to get under here so I could show you one of these. Oh, here we go. This is one of the train stations. The trains are like suspended underneath of the island. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then oh, here's some pipes and trash network. And it's like a conveyor system. And then on top you have basically, there's like a mock beach on top of the floating island. So this is like, I think it was a 10-meter deep ocean. I mean, basically a giant, lake or something. It's a man-made structure with a huge, enormous pool at the top, which simulates pretty much having a beach where people could hang out here. And then there's pretty much one of the train stations. It's similar to a train station, but basically you just use this to come up out of the train network below. Oh, I can't get to it from below. Okay, so also the scale of everything on here is gigantic. So all of these trees are like the tallest palm trees on Earth. They're like, I think 100 feet tall, and each of these light posts is like 75 feet tall. And let's go over to the other side. Where did I have? Oh shoot. This version does not have. I had rides and stuff on one version of this island, but I guess I opened the wrong one. Well, anyway, it has almost everything. So, airport, that basically these are A380 airplanes. These are the biggest airplanes ever, commercial jets ever made. And just to show the scale, you fly in here with your airplane, you're still going, when you're landing, you're still going 150 miles an hour, I think. And you come in here, you hit the runway, and then you taxi all the way down. Watch out for the other plane. And then this is the terminal where where you can pull up and passengers get on and off. And then up here there's a heliport, and also space for UAVs. So I don't want to get too into the weeds of all the details for this particular island, because there's so much more to it. But basically the concept I want to tell you is there's plenty of room for everybody, for all 10 million people, inhabitants on this island, to be happy and healthy and entertained and active. And you can leave and go places and come back and live in luxury, And so that's the big island. I call this New Honolulu. So anyway, on to the next. So the reason I didn't stop here is because this island's way too big to be practical in my lifetime. I mean, literally 100 years from now, it's not likely that this will be built. It's already been almost 15 years since I developed this design. It's been 14 years. And literally nothing even comes remotely close to this. So you can imagine 100 years could go by and this might not happen. And that's a shame. But I think to get there, we need something smaller. So then I started playing with some ideas. And then the next one I came up with was this. And this is a really rough one. I mean, I have a better version. Just hang with me. There's a much better version coming up. So, but this is, I'm going to show you like the timeline, the progression. So this one was for, I think, 10,000 people. All right. And then there's going to be, heliport right here for helicopters. And then there's recreational space up top. And then there's multiple decks of living space. And each of these is like at least 3 meters high or 3 or 4 meters high. So, and this is a very rough version. Okay, let me show you where this went. The next version of this. Where'd it go? The next version went to this. All right. So I call this the MPS 10K. So Marine Population System, MPS 10K means it's on the scale of about 10,000 people. I think this one might actually hold 20, 30, 40,000, but not like a million and not like 100. But like it's on the scale of around tens of thousands. And so it's called the MPS 10K, the Peach MPS 10K. And here's your helipad and your entrance. Okay. And inside, this is, under the main recreation deck, you have like all kinds of great recreation things to do. Endless things to do, just basically like a huge amusement park, pretty much. If it's a condo, if this structure is operated as a condo and all the units are owned by the residents or owned, rented, you know how condos work. You could pretty much have a complete amusement park at the top, and your condo fee runs the amusement park. Because you imagine it's much bigger than a normal condo. It's vastly bigger than a normal condo. And of course, the condo fees are also probably a little bit more than a normal condo because you're like living on a floating structure on the ocean. So, yeah, they could afford to have a really amazing state-of-the-art amusement park. So that was my second design. I mean, second/third, I guess. Let's call it the second one because, it was really just a perfection of, improvement on, iterating different designs. So after I came up with the Peach, I also came up with some, like, see how there's sharp edges on here? Well, I came up with a smoother look to that, with this kind of rounded version. And also installed this nightclub. You have like a nightclub on one side, and you got like, I think there was a restaurant on the other side. They probably don't look any different, but you could fit this out to be a restaurant or something. And remember, this is under the ocean surface, right? Pretty cool. Is that cool? I mean, I think it's cool. I love it. I would just love to be there as long as it's safe. All right. So, and then actually here's like a smaller version with still has the same height of decks. So instead of like 20,000 people, maybe 5,000 people. So keep in mind, like this boat right here is just kind of a depiction of an Oasis class. Yeah, in 2010, Oasis class was still like pretty basically new, and it was the biggest ships on Earth, and still almost biggest ships because now the Icon class has gotten dramatically bigger. But these ships can hold, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 people. And so, but those are in small, like small rooms, right? It's like it's meant to be on, you're on the cruise ship for a few days, a week. That's it. You're not a permanent resident on a cruise ship. And it's quite feasible you could be. But I imagine people are going to want a lot more than a small room if they're going to be living there permanently. So what this does is, first off, it takes away the propulsion system. Okay, it gives you a much better room. It gives you actually, as good as the recreation and dining and entertainment is on Royal Caribbean cruise ships and other cruise ships, you could have dramatically better entertainment on one of these floating islands. Dramatically better, because you can, that whole under the canopy, huge amusement park with not like skimpy versions of rides. You can have full blown versions of rides. Like, okay. Um, so that is the peach. And this is the, I call it peaches and cream because it's so much smoother than the original peach. Anyway, okay, so next. What was next? What was next? Oh, I think after peach, I went to the grape. So this is the MPS 1K grape. There's that giant thing in the background. For some reason, there's like a giant pyramid in the background. Sorry about that. I'm going to turn it this way. We're just going to focus on this. So now you still see the Oasis class, the scale of the Oasis class right next to it. And so this is designed for maybe 1,000 permanent residents. This could be built on top of an existing oil rig support structure. Or you can build a custom support, structure to hold it up in place. So all of my designs had a similar concept where there's an open recreation area on top and the living space underneath. That's like a key design element in every one of my designs. So, I mean, you're gonna see it all the way through. So, check it out. Here's a good place to knock some biodegradable golf balls into the ocean if you want to practice. And then these are some. Now, there's no structure underneath of these lifeboats, but imagine, like, just use a little imagination. Come on, work with me here. It's a lot of work to build this stuff. So there would be like some support structure here to hold up these lifeboats and a release mechanism. So someone inside, once it's filled up, someone inside can push a button and drop the whole lifeboat into the ocean. It's not a, it's not a custom concept. Those, you can see that kind of lifeboat on oil rigs. Now the only thing is you'd have to make it a little bit better than the ones that are on oil rigs, because remember, like, this is like a residential installation. So if you're trying to escape from this residential installation because it's burning or it's sinking, and you jump in here, you might have your little children, infants, babies, and they need to be able to drop, and land into the ocean on the lifeboat and not get hurt, So just check it out. Plenty of recreation space, a beautiful like beach area. You could have other pools. Pretty much just picture an amusement park. That's pretty much what it would be like at the top. And here's where you fly in. Of course, there would be like an entrance in here where you can get into the elevator. All right. So that was pretty much like, I think, the third design that I had for a floating island. Now remember, the theme here is they keep getting smaller. So we started with a huge floating island for 10 million people. And it got smaller to a 20,000 person island. And this is for like 1,000 people. This is the grape. And the reason they keep getting smaller is the whole motivation is because I started huge, right? But those huge designs are just way too big to be practical. It's too big to make it compelling. It's too big to get people's real money in today's world to support something like that. So I kept going smaller. I kept saying, okay, what would be a smaller structure that we could inspire people to build? That's drumming up real economic activity. Okay, we're making real products for people. Okay, and so even this, 1,000 person island, it sounds cool, it looks cool, right? But who's gonna actually pay for it? Anybody? Do I see a hand over there? No? Okay, hold on. Let's go to a smaller design. So the next one that I had some interim designs. I think like, no, this actually came later. I think the next one was, and at this point I was starting to really participate on a forum for the group called the Seasteading Institute. I started getting active in their forum. They're the only people that were online at the time talking about colonizing oceans. So they had a free forum. I was sharing ideas with people. It was pretty cool. And I think the next one that I started to publicize was my Bergstedt design. Now, this is actually an advanced version of the Bergstedt. So the Bergstedt started out as basically a flat tray box. Let's call it a flat box laying on the surface of the ocean, but it would be concrete. And inside that box would be living space, and on top would be recreation space. And initially, I thought, I'm not a trained engineer. Well, I'm not a trained. I do have a 2-year engineering degree, but I'm not a trained like naval architect or like that kind of engineering. So initially, I thought if it was big enough concrete box, it wouldn't really get pushed around by the waves. And I built a model, a working floating concrete. I made it out of mortar mix, a concrete model, and put it in the pool where I live, and made some videos and shared those videos with the folks on the Seasteading Institute forum. And well, they pointed out to me, and I agreed, that the initial Bergstedt design had a lot of motion, just from the ripples on the surface. So I thought about it and thought, I'm like, how can I stop that? How can I put an end to that motion? And that's when I came up with the Bergstedt having, well, that's when I really got the name Bergstedt, actually. I don't think it was called Bergstedt at that point. The Bergstedt would have basically a giant solid mass. This down here, this is a solid mass of concrete. Okay? Up here, hollow. Okay? There's living space up here. And then below it, this is a huge hollow area. And the reason for that is if the waves get really terrible, you can flood that area and make the entire structure submerge under the surface. No joke. I'm not making this up. I mean, I actually built a second Bergstedt that did exactly that. It would go underneath the surface and you could bring it back. And it had a solid mass of concrete hanging below. It was a cool design. It cost me about $700. I spent several weeks making it, and I'm still to this day very proud of it. Below this model, there still is, some turbines, hydro turbines. They look like propellers, but they're actually because this structure is moored to the seafloor. You see a mooring line here, and the current's going this way. So the current's passing these propeller blades, and the current could turn. If there's enough current, it can turn as propeller blades, as long as it keeps a decent amount of speed. Now, it's not going to happen anywhere. That you can't just put it anywhere and expect that it's going to create energy. But in certain places, you get enough current in the ocean, even relatively close to the shore, and you could, in theory, create electricity, like constant electricity, and a good enough amount to make it worth all the trouble of building these giant turbines, because they wouldn't be cheap. So that is the Bergstedt design. Oh, keep in mind, the Bergstedt had boat garages. Check it out. Boat garages. Okay. So you could drive your boat in and close these watertight doors. And when you needed to submerge the entire thing under the surface, yeah, they'd be watertight doors. And they can hold out the water pressure and everything. It's a pretty serious design. Um, yeah. It would take some pretty intense engineering, and I wouldn't be the engineering lead on it. I just kind of conceptualized it, but I do believe it's very possible to build. Okay, so the next one. It was around this time that I actually ended up going out to California and living in California. I had trouble finding permanent work, permanent job, and permanent, like, well, sustainable income. And I wasn't into drugs or anything like that, but I did end up living in my car. And I drove out to California, Southern California, and that's a whole chapter of my life that, I'm happy to tell you about at some point. But while in California, I started building some other designs. I believe the next one was this. I call it the supply boatstead. Supply boatstead. So basically, just buy an existing supply boat. A supply boat will have a flat area on the back. Okay, and there's lots of these things because the oil industry uses them all the time. And so, for a reasonable price, you can get a used one and fit out, retrofit the inside to be a luxury yacht. And then on the back here, you can feel like a nice flat open recreation area, like a backyard. Be like the really cool backyard that just happens to also be on the ocean. And then I made the three different boats because yeah, you could do like this same concept on different scales. Like these supply vessels can get pretty huge. So anyway, so that was another design. And this is all in the effort of getting somebody to like throw down some money and say like, yes, I want that. I want to build that. Let's do it. It never happened. I tried to popularize it, and not that surprisingly, it didn't happen. But you know, it'd be a big win for me if ever somebody said, Rich, I really love these ideas, and I'm wealthy, and I think that you're right, and we need to start building ways to live on the ocean, and I want to do it. If I ever had somebody say that, my career would be, I mean, that would be a huge notch up in my career and life, my contribution to the world. I hope to make that my contribution to the world some point in my career. Even if I don't build a floating city for 10 million people, if I could just get some wealthy person to build some kind of floating island, whether it's a boatstead or a bergstead that submerges, or any of these designs, or even talk somebody into one of the other designs that's out there. If you like the idea of spreading out onto the ocean, and especially if you happen to be wealthy, but I'd really like to talk to you, and just tell you about what the possibilities are. There's a lot of possibilities. I've been in this I've been in this community of conceptual designers for over 10 years, and I haven't seen enough action. There's just a lot of talk, and not a lot of people are actually spending money on it and to own these kind of structures. All right, so the next one. I'm very proud of the shipstead, the supply shipstead, but I'm also very proud of this. It's called a Texas Tower. And so what that is, basically, there are these towers out on the Atlantic coast. They were originally built in the 1960s by the Coast Guard as a light tower. And there was originally, I think there was 9 of them. And I believe at least 2 or 3 of them still exist. But I don't even, at this point, I don't even know what state of disrepair they're in. 10 years ago, I probably could have told you in detail on several of them exactly how, their status was. But at this point, I haven't even been paying attention, to be honest with you. I'll show you what they look like. One of them is called the Chesapeake Tower. And this is what they actually look like. These are real structures. Okay, I'm not making this up. When you see my island design, this is a real thing that already exists. In fact, one person already bought one of them. I mean, many years ago we bought it. I think he still owns it. The Frying Pan Tower. Yeah, his name is Richard. I can't think of his last name at the moment, but he's owned this tower out off of South Carolina, I believe. It's pretty far off coast. He's owned this since probably, gosh, I want to say 2011, 2012, maybe. I can't remember, but it has been quite a long time that this has been privately owned. He's operated it as a bed and breakfast, I think, a lot of the time. It's just the thing is with these structures is they're very expensive to maintain. I mean, to the point where, like, if you really were wealthy, like, it really wouldn't be worth restoring it. I mean, by the time you spend all the money restoring it, like, you're missing out on all the technology and stuff that you can build into it to use it as a personal residential structure. But that was another great idea. And this is just kind of my visualization of how you could fit it out with boat lifts and some solar panels and all kinds of recreational kind of stuff. And I'm sure it's, luxury interior. And, I put this like clear fencing around the top deck and a heliport above here because most of the helicopters was supposed to land on the main area, but I changed that to above this gazebo thing. Anyway, this is just a conceptual design. It's just to try to like inspire somebody to say, hey, that's really cool. I want to put some money toward this. All right, so somehow here comes a pretty big chapter in my design work. In 2014, I had already been living in Southern California for a couple years, and I'm still homeless at that time. And I'm like, I have this laptop computer. I'm taking it to the libraries near Venice Beach, California, and I had this brainstorm idea for a spar tower. And here is the original concept design from 2014 for the Cherry Spar Tower. Now this went through numerous iterations. All right, it started as not having these tilted windows, smaller. Eventually I came up with these tilted windows. I made it 2 decks, well, a third deck for the recreation on top, with a helipad on top of a gazebo. And just imagine any number of things on the top deck. And later, you know, in 2014, in summer of 2014, I designed this. Early summer 2014. And it wasn't until a year and a half later I hired somebody, paid somebody to build a better model of this and make like more realistic looking images. And they did a really nice job of it. The gentleman's name was Ivan. I gave him only $500. It's terrible to think that I only paid $500 for all the work he did. But I mean, I didn't. Not that I had any money to begin with, and that's the number that we agreed to. And so a gentleman named Ivan Vasquez rebuilt this for me in a 3D modeling software that he can use to make it more photorealistic. And we use that to make some images and try to popularize the design. Unfortunately, it still never caught on. And then years later after that, I rebuilt the whole entire thing myself in Blender around the 2019, 2020, and also 2022. Yeah, 2021, 22. That's when I started really making this realistic. So I'll switch over to Blender and show you that model. All right. So this is the Blender version. Oh gosh. Yeah. So the computer doesn't want to open all these models. This stuff is very intense for the computer to handle. All right. But this is the Cherry Spar Tower. And I have rendered versions of this on my channel. So if you look through and you'll see, just scroll through some of my older videos in the last few years, and you'll see completely rendered versions of this. It's coming straight from the same software, but a rendered version takes each separate frame in a sequence and renders it as a photorealistic image, compiles all those images into a moving video, and that's what you'll see if you scroll down. Oh, and here's like in Blender, my New Honolulu, the original island for 10 million people. But anyway. So, oh, I almost forgot this one. You know what? I'll go back to that. So, this one right here. This is around the same time that I created the Cherry Spar Tower. This is just another idea I had. I mean, these could be multiple decks high. I'm only showing one deck underneath of the recreation space. Probably you wouldn't need that much recreation space for the people living on that one deck. So you could have lots of decks underneath and they can all share the recreation space. But basically this is what, hexagons? It's six-sided shape. And these could be potentially connected together. Well, in my mind at the time that was the case. In reality, no, you could not. You could not connect these together. There would be way too. I mean, in a 3D software, they look fine, but the reality is, on the ocean, you have lots and lots of waves moving around. Everything's moving around. I can't think of any way to connect these that they wouldn't get damaged just being in contact with each other. I mean, if you look at oil rigs on the ocean, whenever they're not touching, they're far apart from each other. And that's because they don't want them to touch unless it's one single structure. So that was just a conceptual design. And I honestly, I don't really like it. I don't consider this one of my 9 designs because it's not realistic, you know. I don't even like it. You could potentially do a structure that interlocks to make more area, and there are some concepts for that. but it's very hard. And I don't think that's where we need to start with colonizing the ocean. We need to start with baby steps. We need to start with things that are relatively easy because they're going to be expensive even if they're easy. So we should start with easy. Before I went to California, when I was still on those forums on the Seasteading Institute's website back in 2011, I think. Because I went to California in 2012, but 2011, I think, was when I came up with this design. I called it the Richardson Bay Stead. Richardson Bay is basically north of San Francisco. It's just north of San Francisco. It's like adjacent to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I guess because honestly, it wouldn't even work in Richardson Bay now that I look at it, because Richardson Bay is very shallow and this comes below the surface. But this was kind of like before Bergstead. It would have to be like in a protected environment. It couldn't be offshore. It could be in a lake. It has to be deep enough. A small lake, a large pond, a smallish bay that doesn't have too much ripples in the water, too much waves. But the reason I'm showing this off is because I really like how I did connect these. I think there is some value in this one, in the way that it's connected. So basically, if you look under here, this is like a trailer hitch from a truck. You know, it's basically a larger version, where it's pretty much a ball hitch, and you know the thing on top that connects, and that way you could have drastic amount of motion up and down and side to side and twisting tight motions, and it wouldn't hurt a ball hitch too much at all. And then below that there's some more structure, like this part would have to, yeah, probably have to get replaced every now and then because it's got to be made out of metal, you know. But the rest of this could be made out of concrete. And concrete is considered a pretty good building material for ocean colonies, permanent, you know, ocean environments, because it's very durable on the ocean. So anyway, this is the main designs that I've got. I think the one where I was the most proud after I made it was, well, actually all of them. Just to be honest with you, I spent thousands of hours on these models, and I love sharing it with you. I don't know who you are, but whoever you are, I just love sharing it with the world, and I hope you loved it too. So, you know, feel free to leave a comment, and I'm happy to respond back to you. All right, thanks.